Hello, tribe, and welcome to another episode of the Faye Jones Life Podcast. This is your host, Faye Jones, and we're in episode 21. And today we're going to be talking about healing from the effects of covert sibling rivalry. Now, sibling rivalry is a common experience for many children, but whenever parents covertly instill it, it can have long-lasting effects on adult children and their relationships with their siblings. So in this episode, we're going to explore the impact of covert sibling rivalry on adult children, and we're going to provide practical strategies for healing and building healthier relationships with your sibling. So whether you're struggling with your relationship with your sibling or simply interested in learning more about this topic, I'm going to encourage you to continue to listen. Now, this is part of a series on parenting that we are going to be doing. So I want you to stay tuned because we're going to continue to build on this topic. Now, let's jump right into defining what is covert sibling rivalry. Now, this is a form of competition and comparison that parents may instill between siblings, often without realizing it. And unlike overt sibling rivalry, which involves open and visible conflict, covert sibling rivalry is more subtle. It involves comparison, favoritism, competition, or negative labeling. The effects of this type of rivalry on adult children can include resentment, jealousy, low self-esteem, difficulty forming close relationships, and ongoing competition, which can make it challenging for adult children to maintain healthy relationships, not just with their siblings, but with other people. And it also impacts their mental and emotional well-being. So what does covert sibling rivalry looks like? Let's talk about comparing siblings. Again, we're talking about when a parent instills this or creates an environment that fosters that sibling rivalry. So comparing siblings, some parents do it unconsciously. Some parents I have seen that actually do it very purposely. But when you're comparing one child to the other, using phrases like, why can't you be more like your sister? Or your brother is so much better than you are. This automatically puts the children at odds with each other. It puts the siblings at odds with each other. And so now they're not able to see their sibling as somebody that's a safe space and a safe place to build a beautiful, healthy relationship. They don't see their sibling as a person where they can get support from. They start to see their sibling as somebody they need to beat, somebody they need to dominate, and somebody who they're going to be in constant competition with or in their shadow. Another way that sibling rivalry is fomented covertly is favoritism. Parents may show more favoritism towards one child over the other. And this can be seen, for example, where one parent may spend more time with one child, praise one child more often, and give more gifts and privileges to one child than they do to the other. Another one is creating competition. And this is where a parent encourages competition between siblings, setting up scenarios where one child can win over the other. And this can lead to resentment, jealousy in between siblings. Now, we're not talking about, normal healthy competition, like in the sense when you're playing a video game or you're setting out to play a board game. Obviously, look, even when I'm playing a board game with my own kids, I tell my kids, at this point, I'm not actually playing to let you win. We are going to play, and whoever wins, wins, and we're going to learn to celebrate the victories. And we learn to celebrate each other when one wins over the other because we're creating good sportsmanship. But when the competition is about literally crushing your own sibling and seeing your sibling as your rival, that creates some serious problems. Now, also another way that parents foment the sibling rivalry is through giving unequal responsibilities. And that's where one parent might give one child more responsibilities than another, which can create resentments and inequalities. And obviously, with this, I feel like I need to make a side note on this, because responsibilities need to be given adequately based on the age and capacity of that person or that child. But when you both child are capable of doing the same thing and you're only expecting one child to do that, and you don't hold the other child accountable for also doing their part, like for instance, if both children are over age that they can both clean the bathroom, why would we expect one child to clean the bathroom and not the other? No, the responsibility needs to be they both need to take turns cleaning the bathroom because they both use the bathroom. So why would we hold one child, oh, this bathroom's not clean, it's all your fault, and not look at the other child who also uses the bathroom and not be like, hey, that bathroom's not clean because you also haven't been contributing to that. And that's just a simple example of that. Now, there's also another way that we instill this sibling rivalry is to negative comparison. You know, parents may take to saying things like, why can't you be more like your sister who always gets the good grades? And that's just a very simple statement that a lot of parents sometimes make, and it could be out of frustration or anything. But these kind of statements leave that child feeling inadequate, and it lowers their self-esteem. And this is the thing, and because I've even seen this this quote floating around social media this week, and I need to address it, where the quote was saying, the Bible doesn't teach self-esteem, it teaches self-respect. And that is true to an extent, because here's the thing. If you are growing up in an environment, or you are raising your children in a way where you are constantly devaluing them and making them feel insecure and inadequate about themselves and who they are and their identity in Christ, they're not going to esteem themselves to the level that God says to esteem themselves. And this is important because we're often, sharing things, but we're not really looking at what the true definitions of the words are, because that word esteem, what the word esteem means, and this is according to the Oxford Language Dictionary, is respect and admiration, typically for a person. So actually, the word esteem and respect are synonymous. So when we say we're teaching somebody self-esteem, what we're saying is we're teaching them self-respect. That is what that word means. So I want to debunk that, and I want to break that, because they're synonymous. They're exactly the same thing. They mean exactly the same thing. So whether you want to use the word respect or self-esteem, the Bible teaches it all the same. And when we're doing things that leads to a feeling of inadequacy, we're teaching our child not to respect themselves. And that's what negative comparison does. And that is what child rivalry does. It's at the core of it, it's teaching them not to respect themselves and not to respect others. It's teaching them not to love themselves, therefore they will not know how to love another. What is another way that we foment that covert sibling rivalry as parents? When we label children as, oh, that's the smart one or the troublemaker, making the other child feel, again, inadequate and resentful towards the other sibling. Think about it. How would you feel if your siblings have the labels of being the good person, the smart person, the kind person, and then when your parents start talking about you, they're talking about, oh, this child was my headache, he was my troublemaker, they could never get anything done right, and they never have anything positive to say about you. You will always feel inadequate and like you're less than, but you'll also start to feel resentful not only towards your other siblings, but even towards yourself and towards your parents. So we as parents need to be conscious of that. If that doesn't foment us to respect ourselves, why would we do it to our children? Remember the golden rule that Jesus himself established, which was do unto others as you would like done to yourself. So as parents, the first thing we need to do is we need to look at how would I feel if I was being talked to in the way I'm talking to my child? How would I feel if if my family created this type of relationships with my siblings and I'm pushing this same kind of thing? And actually, let's push the envelope even further, because as parents, a lot of the times, if we're instilling this kind of behavior of that covert sibling rivalry, it's because we ourselves grew up in an environment where either covertly or overtly sibling rivalry was instilled. And so we need to look back, and instead of saying, oh, well, I grew up that way and I'm fine, it didn't kill me, what we need to look at is how did it damage the relationships? Because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell you, the parents who instill these kind of behaviors and these kind of dynamics with their own children don't have relationships with their siblings, don't have good relationship with their parents, because what got instilled was this competition. And as a matter of fact, I don't feel like they're in the shadow or they're resentful or bitter towards their siblings. And granted, it's not every situation, because in some situations other dynamics take place where siblings are not having a relationship. Maybe you didn't grow up with your siblings, so you don't have a close relationship. But if you grew up with your siblings under the same roof in the same household with the same set of parents, and the minute you guys became 18, you all parted your own ways and you won't even talk to each other, you don't call each other, you live in the same town, maybe even down the street for each other, but you haven't talked in years, you need to be looking at this. And we need to start making those changes to say, I am not going to do the exact same thing that was done to me, because it's going to create the exact same type of dynamic with my children. And all of us, without a shadow of doubt, even though some people will deny it, every single human being has a deep down longing for family and for close, intimate relationships. But when we engage in this kind of behavior, we are destroying those opportunities for those deep, healthy, intimate relationships. Now, what's another way that we instill covert sibling rivalry? It's favoritism. And this is when we say, oh, well, I love my children all the same. A lot of parents, we all say that. But when we're giving, we need to guard ourselves that we're not giving more attention to one child and giving our love and affection to one child, and then we are literally creating a vacuum where the rest of the children feel starved of love and attention. Or where, and granted, there's times in life where our children are going to be heading in a direction where they don't need to be headed. So at times, one child may require a little more correction and chastisement than another. And that's part of life. But if you start to look back at the whole trajectory from raising that child until they become an adult, and as a parent, all we've done is always correct and argue with a child, but we never gave that child encouragement, love, patience, grace, acceptance. And then the other child can do horrendous things and they never get corrected. They'll never get chastised. They never see any corrective action of any kind. You can see how one child's going to feel targeted. And this again will instill that rivalry, resentment, and jealousy from one sibling to the other. And you may be saying, wow, Faye, you're being really hard on parents. And look, I'm a parent myself. I have 2 children. And if you call and interview my children, they will tell you I'm not perfect. That I have good days as a mom, and then I got some days where they want to roll their eyes at me. And if they could throat punch me, they probably would. Because this is not about me presenting myself to be a perfect parent. Actually, this is the fact of having grown up in an extremely dysfunctional family at every level, on all sides, because I can't say it was just my mom's side or just my dad's side. On all sides, I grew up in an extremely dysfunctional family. And as a life coach, I get to coach women who also grew up in extremely dysfunctional families and that are now healing from that because they're trying to build whole and healthy families. So I see this kind of stuff every day. And there's adults in my life that are my elders who to this day play into this sibling rivalry thing covertly. And I've had to learn, okay, I cannot change that person. So now I have to guard my heart and set the proper boundaries as to not play into that or engage into that and create toxic relationships with myself and other people in my family. So I'm being very blunt and very upfront with us parents because we need to open our eyes to these things, and we can no longer take it as tradition, because a lot of the times the family curses and the oppression that keeps going down from one generation to the next has nothing to do with demonic influences or demonic possession. It has nothing to do with spiritual things. It has to do with the fact that we refuse to address the elephant in the room. We refuse to change our patterns and behaviors in the name of nostalgia because mama and daddy and grandmama and grandpapa and auntie and uncle were raised this way and they taught us this way. We came out all right. We're all right. So we're going to keep on passing that legacy of toxicity, disrespect, complete disregard for one another down as a family heirloom. And when we're doing that, we're completely negating what the scriptures say. Because the scriptures clearly call us to love one another, to respect one another, to be mindful of how our behavior affects other people, not to be stumbling blocks to others. And that includes even our own children. It calls us to not provoke our children to wrath. And this is not about worshiping our children. It is about worshiping our God and preparing our household so that our children through us can see Christ in us and develop a healthy view of who God is. And when we are a poor example, when we don't apply the word to our own lives, what we're doing is we're giving a poor example of what the Heavenly Father's love and grace is like, which makes it harder for our children to relate with God. And then we have the audacity to complain and say, I raised my child in church all their lives. Why does my child doesn't love the Lord? The minute they turn on the Lord, they walked away from the Lord and they're living a life of sin. And I can't understand that because that's not the example you gave them. Let me tell you something. Being in a garage does not turn you into a car. Just like sitting in the church does not turn you into a Christian. And the biggest mistake we make is thinking that taking our children to church and to church services and Bible school and all those things are going to turn our children into believers. But the reality of it is that our children are looking more at our example, how we live, how we do life every single day. And that is what is determining whether the God we serve is real or if it's just a facade. And if our children see us going through the motions and they see that our life does not mirror that of Christ and that it does not match what the scripture says, we are giving them absolutely zero reason to believe in God. We're giving them zero reason to follow Christ. And we're really quick to quote scriptures that say things like, oh, the Apostle Paul said, be imitators of me as I'm imitator of Christ. And we apply that to evangelism and to church leadership and to things when we're reaching the lost. But when are we going to apply that to our homes and when we're reaching our family? Are we living our life in such a way that merits that our children imitate who we are and what we do? Because what they're seeing is not mom or dad. What they're seeing is my mom, my dad is the living picture, a living example of what being Christ-like looks like. I know, I got fired up there. And I'm making no apologies for it because it needed to be said. What's another way that we instill this sibling rivalry? When we ignore or downplay conflicts between siblings, which causes resentments to build up over time. It can also make one child feel victimized and feel like their feelings and needs are not being heard or validated. And you're telling me, well, that just sounds real psychological to me. That just sounds like a lot of psychological psychobabble. Well, I'm going to break this down to you right now. Let's go back to the story of David. When his daughter was raped by his own son. And David didn't do anything about it. He literally just ignored the conflict. What happened next? One brother became so angry that what did he do? He killed his own son, his own brother, to avenge his sister. And then he tried to even overthrow his own father from the throne. Let's look at the story of Jacob. When again, his daughter was raped, but because his daughter was from the marriage with the woman he didn't love, because it was Leah, not Rachel, what did he do? He ignored the whole situation. And when it came to light, the young man who was infatuated with the girl and who violated the girl came and asked for the girl's hand. And what did he do? He gave her to this guy who violated her in marriage. And what do we see happen? His sons, outraged by this situation, took matter into their own hands. And they went and killed that young man and his parents and everybody in that household. And Jacob's response was, what have you done? This is going to come back on me. Have you ever thought how it's going to affect me? How it's going to affect how people view me? How you put my life in danger? And he had no regard for his own children and the conflict that was created because of him ignoring it and downplaying it. So we're seeing it in the Bible, and the Bible was very clearly in putting it in there. Not so that we can make excuses for it and say, oh, well, if David did it, if Jacob did it, then I guess it's okay that it's going on in our family. The Bible showed us not only the situation play by play, but also the consequences so that we would learn to do better. And yes, it's giving a clear message that God's mercy and God's love for us and the purpose that he has created for our lives is such that even when we royally mess up like that, he can still redeem it and still create a purpose in our life. But it doesn't mean that we should go along doing that, because all of those actions had consequences and detours for every single person that was involved in those narratives that didn't have to happen. Here's another one. Encouraging secrecy. Parents may encourage siblings to keep secrets from each other and withhold information. And that creates an atmosphere of distrust, and it leads to, again, more conflict. And I would dare to say that if a child needs to keep a secret from another child, and granted, for context, one thing is if you bought a surprise birthday gift or you're doing a surprise birthday party or a surprise trip. Those are secrets you want to keep temporarily. Yes, those are fine. But what we're talking about is secrets that can completely alter and affect that child's life. And even the child who's keeping the secret, because now you're forcing them to carry a weight which was not meant for them to ever carry. Another way that we instill this is creating double standards. We have two different sets of rules. So when one child gets away with, the other one can't get away with. That means we don't have just balances. The rules have to apply for everyone, including ourselves. Now let's talk about behaviors that adult children may demonstrate due to covert sibling rivalry. And there's one that's really obvious, which is competition. The adult children may tend to compete with their siblings, even as adults. And it will manifest in various ways. One of them is trying to outdo each other in their careers or relationships. They're constantly sizing each other up. Resentment. That adult children will resent their siblings or their parents or both, particularly if they feel that they were treated unfairly or neglected. Jealousy, or I would say envy. It's a better word here. An adult child will feel jealous or envious of a sibling's success or accomplishments, particularly if their own achievements have been overlooked or undervalued. Parents, this is really important. It doesn't matter how small or insignificant our children's achievement may seem in our eyes, they all need to be equally celebrated. Because our children are individual and they have talents and abilities in different areas. And one of them being talented in one area and the other one being talented in another area does not devalue them, and it does not make them any less than. It simply makes them different. Can we learn to value our children's individualities and uniqueness and the gifts that God has put in them without having to measure or size them up to see whether they're worthy of our praise and admiration? Can we instead encourage them to pursue what God has put in them and to excel at it? What's another behavior that adult children who have been subject to this covert sibling rivalry experience? And that is difficulties in forming close relationships. And it's not just close relationships with their siblings, but also with others, because they live such a life where they've been jaded and having to protect themselves and keep a guard up all the time. So now they live guarded or very competitive with everyone, which also always makes them to be living on the defense. So it makes it difficult for them to connect. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a person that I pick up really quick when somebody sees me as their competition instead of their friend. When somebody sees me as their competition instead of their family member. And when I see that, I stay clear from those people. You will see I'm like, hi, bye, I love you, I'll pray for you. But you will not see me hanging out with that person. You will not see me interacting very much with that person. I've learned to guard my heart because I'm not going to develop resentment. I'm not going to engage in a toxic relationship. I understand that there's something that person sees in me that makes them feel inadequate, and that it is not my job to fix it. It's their job to fix it. And if I'm being a trigger to them, I'm going to stay clear until they've worked whatever it is they need to work out and we can reconnect and have a healthy relationship. I offer to help, but if they're going to come and attack me when I'm trying to help, I'm going to take that cue from the scriptures where it says, do not offer your pearls to the swine, lest they trample you with them. Because that's really what that means is sometimes you're trying to give your best to somebody who's not ready to receive it, and they're going to turn around and attack you with it. Because if you've never been around farm animals, swine eat everything. they destroy everything. There's nothing they don't leave intact. They even eat their own. So when somebody's in that state of mind where they can't recognize value, where they can't recognize love, where they can't recognize respect, sometimes distance is the thing you have to do. What's another thing that you will see in adult children who have been in covert sibling rivalry? Low self-esteem or low self-respect. They're always going to feel like they're not good enough and struggle a lot with self-doubt. Another thing that they'll deal with is difficulty in trusting others. Because adult children who have been encouraged to keep secrets or withhold information that is very important and critical will often then develop a difficulty trusting others. They feel like they always have to be on guard so they're not let down. And here are some of the challenges that adult children face when healing from covert sibling rivalry. They number one, have a difficulty acknowledging and recognizing that this covert sibling rivalry even exists. Then they go through the feeling of guilt or shame for having negative feelings towards their siblings. They deal with a fear of being judged or invalidated by others because of the experiences in their family dynamics. They struggle in communicating and expressing their emotions effectively with their siblings and with others. They feel stuck in a cycle of resentment and bitterness towards their sibling, their parents, and others. They have difficulty setting boundaries and asserting their needs in their relationship. And this does not just simply extend to siblings and parents, but if these adult children later on get married, it affects how they interact in their own marriage. They have struggle letting go of past hurts and moving forward positively in life. They see the person that's always stuck in the negative, and it seems like they're stuck with the black cloud over being constantly over them, and how everything that happens now triggers a pain from the past, and it always goes back to the past hurt. This is the result of that. And then some of them, they may stay in a relationship with a very toxic sibling who may even be abusive, whether it's verbally or physically, or is like an emotional vampire. And because they're afraid of losing that relationship, they'll never speak up about their feelings or their experiences, and they'll just stay in that. And here's this thing. The strategy that I'm going to give you is simple. Strategies for healing from this are actually very simple. They just simply take courage. And the first thing to heal from these is you got to acknowledge your feelings. You got to stop hiding and denying the fact that you may feel pain, that you may feel resentment, that you may feel anger, that you may feel bitterness towards the situation. You got to face the emotion face to face. You got to look at it in the eye and say, okay, I am feeling this way because of this, this, and this. Ignoring it or suppressing it actually leads to long-term negative consequences for you, which also mean increased stress, anxiety, and depression. And in some cases, it can even lead to substance abuse and even suicidal tendencies. So these unresolved issues, you gotta first face them and realize what the root cause of it is, where it's coming from, and address it. And recognize that it is affecting your relationships, not just with your sibling, but with your parents, with other family members, with your friends. It's affecting every area of your life, because this kind of stuff, it taints everything. The second thing is you need to start setting healthy boundaries. And that means the minute things are being said or conversations are being had that you know lead you towards resentment, jealousy, depression, bitterness, or any of these things, You need to end that conversation right there and be very clear with the person as to why you're ending that conversation. And communicate the fact that you do you not appreciate those conversations, but that you're not going to have them. And this is a reason why I personally do not have conversations with family members about my own children. Because unfortunately, there are some family members in my family that tend to do this comparison of so-and-so children versus so-and-so children versus so-and-so's children, and compare accomplishments and anything. And they tend to, in their mind, give out a judgment as to whose child's doing better than whose and who's doing better than the other. And being in this field that I'm in and having the experience that I have, I know that not to be the case. Because every child is individual. Every child has a path that God has traced for them. And if we, like Einstein said, if we judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, we will always think it's stupid. Fish were meant to swim. Birds were meant to fly. Gazelles were meant to run. We need to identify whether our kid's a fish, a gazelle, or a bird, and let them excel in that area at the pace that they are called to excel. Because ultimately, it's not about them fulfilling our ego and our needs to feel important and to have the whole world applaud us and say, oh, look at you. You're such a great parent because your kids accomplished this or that or the other. Because if you're setting up your children to stroke your ego, they're going to fail. That's number one. And number two, you're going to derail them from the plan that God has for their life. Our job as parents is to help our children find as quickly as possible what is the path that God has for their life. What is the thing that God put them on this earth to be and do, and help them excel in that. Because in that, they're doing the kingdom work. And they're living out their God-given destiny. In that, they will find joy. They will find peace. They will find fulfillment. They will find favor. They will find the blessing of the Lord that leaves no sorrow with it. And they will run their race and they will finish well. And any parent that does not have that in mind, you're sabotaging your children and setting them up to fail. We need to learn to take our ego out of it and be eternity minded. How is my behavior? How is my drive and my pushing of my children going to affect their eternity? And again, I'm going to give you another recommendation, and I'm not getting paid for it, but get the book Driven by Eternity. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. You will understand what it is that I'm talking about. John Bevere did an amazing job there in depicting God's heart, the Father's heart towards us, and what's truly important. And that doesn't mean that our kids need to be locked up in the room praying and reading their Bible all the time, because as they're pursuing their education and their careers, they are going to be walking out their purpose in Christ. One thing about setting boundaries is not only do you need to identify the issue and communicate your needs, but you need to also learn to be assertive when you're setting your boundaries. Don't be afraid to say no or stand up for yourself. But this also means you too also have to respect other people's boundaries. We have to make sure we understand their needs and their boundaries and learn to respect them. And here's the thing about that. Because sometimes people use boundaries as a weapon to attack each other and block each other. And look, I've become really quick at identifying who are these people who do that. Boundaries are not a thing for grandstanding and attacking each other or punishing each other. Boundaries is a way to create healthy relationships and to teach our families, rather than breaking into our house, they can be welcomed through the front door. It is meant to promote healing and restoration and reconciliation, not punishment. But here's the thing about boundaries. When somebody crosses the boundaries, there needs to be consequences. So if you're a person who's always telling somebody, this is my boundary, this is my boundary, this is my boundary, but you don't set consequences, they will not respect you. And they will not respect your boundaries. It's very simple. And I'm gonna give you an example. I had a family member who constantly insisted in voicing their opinion about my relationship with other people in my family. But they would always do it covertly. They never had the courage to say, hey, Faye, let's have a conversation. Why have you taken this stance for this situation and the other? Because I really think you're missing the picture and you're not seeing this or this or that or the other. They would do it very covertly by sending reels and messages to my Instagram. And first I was like, oh no, I thought nothing of it at first. But then I started to see a pattern forming and consistently. So I confronted the person. I said, hey, is there any particular reason why you're sending me this type of content with this type of message? Is there something you're trying to tell me? And when I confronted that person in that matter, woo, boy, let me tell you, they went off attacking me and saying, they were pretty much saying, oh, what? Are you offended that I sent you this? I just thought it was a good message. What? What? If you don't like it, then I'm sending you this stuff, then I won't send it to you anymore. And I was like, no, it's not that I'm offended. It's that I am seeing that there's a repeated pattern where you're sending me constant messages on a particular topic. And I want to know if there's something you're trying to tell me. And the reason I'm asking you is because I do not want to assume. So I'd rather hear from you, what are your intentions behind sending me this type of content? And then the person proceeded to tell me, well, I know that, you don't see me as family and all this stuff like that. And I still remember you and I love you as family. And I'm like, look, I had to tell that person, we're family and we will always be family. That will never be in question. However, we haven't seen or talked to each other in over 20 years. And when you show up in my life after not being in my life for 20 years, and you start to send this kind of content when we don't have a relationship established, when we have both changed, and you knew who I was when I was like 8 or 9 years old, but you don't know who I am in my 40s, I have to ask. Because we don't have that rapport, we don't have closeness. A lot has changed in me from when I was 8 years old. I am a completely different person. So if you're willing to get to know each other and reconnect and get to know who we are at this point, I'm game. I am more than happy to engage in conversations and build a new relationship based on who we are now, not on the memories from when we were 8 years old. Well, let me tell you something. Almost 2 years have gone by. That person has not sent another message. You see, because I set a clear boundary. And the boundary is you're not going to throw innuendos and hints and be passive aggressive in your communication with me. If you have something to say or if you have a problem with me, we're going to get our big kid pants on, our grown-up pants on, and we are going to address the situation face to face. And if you do not have the courage to tell me what the issue is face to face, then you also don't get the right to bombard my inbox or my text messages or any other means of contacts that you may have of me to release your toxic, passive aggressive behaviors onto me. And if you're unwilling to engage in adult conversation with sincerity and being upfront and clear about what the issue is, you're also choosing not to be in relationship with me and have any contact with me. And that is the consequence. I don't do passive aggressive. Tell me what you're thinking and give it to me straight. If you can't do that, then why are we even communicating? Why are we in relationship? Because that means you're either afraid of me or you don't trust me. And you cannot build relationships on distrust or fear. It doesn't work. Another thing is you need to seek support, because sometimes, look, some of the issues that you've gone through or that you're dealing with, you're going to need some counseling. You're going to need a therapist, not only to guide you through the healing process and unpacking it so that you don't stay stuck in that trauma and continue to relive it or perpetuate it to others, but also because they're going to teach you where you are boundaryless and you need to set boundaries with yourself, because sometimes part of the problem is we don't have boundaries with ourselves. And we expect to have boundaries with others, but we don't even have boundaries with ourselves. So we need to have both. We have boundaries that we set for others, but we also need to have boundaries that we set for ourselves. And so we need guidance. Because boundaries, like I said earlier, is not about being selfish or about being rude. It's about taking care of yourself and creating a healthy and respectful environment where relationships can thrive. One book that I always recommend, and again, I'm not getting paid for any of this, is the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud. It is a book that will transform your life and your relationships. And he has another series of books which talks about boundaries with children, boundaries in marriage, boundaries in dating, boundaries in a professional setting, necessary endings, safe people. The list goes on. He's got tons of books that will help you not only correct yourself in the areas where you've been wrong, but that will also help you create healthy boundaries so that all relationships in your life can thrive. I've been very open about the boundaries that my mom and I had to set with each other in order to heal our relationship and have a better life. And I can tell you very honestly that my mom and I are having a very beautiful relationship and living some of the best years in our life because of it. We've learned to have the difficult conversations when they need to be had. And believe me, till this day, we're still having difficult conversations, but we're having them with respect. We're having them with grace. We're having them with love. We're having them with kindness. We're not blame shifting. We're not attacking each other. We're simply addressing the issue for what it is, learning how we can communicate better, and we're moving forward. We're learning to be of support to one another. We're all learning to heal from the things that broke us and celebrate the things that reconciled us and united us. And that is my passion behind all of this. Because at the end of the day, time is short. It is relatively short. And you never know when you will take your last breath, or that loved one, whether it's your sibling, your parents, your spouse, cousin, aunts, uncles, whatever, will take their last breath. And while I recognize that there are some relationships that may be difficult or even impossible to reconcile because one person is dead set on being toxic and living in a way that is harmful and detrimental to others, more often than not, most relationships are salvageable. Most relationships can heal. Most relationships can reconcile. And if you have the ability in your relationships to heal and reconcile, I want you to. So that whether it's you taking your last breath or that other person taking their last breath, when that day comes, you have no regrets. That when that day comes, There will be no should've, could've, would've, because you know that you guys lived that life to the max and that your relationship was beautiful in every single way. Because I celebrate even the good, the bad, and the ugly of the situations that happen in my life. I call it the beautiful mess, because out of the ashes comes beauty. And some of those things are part of what made me who I am today. That is what gave me the passion to confront you with these hard truths, because I want your family to be whole. I want your relationships to thrive. I want you to be the best person you could possibly be. With that said, we've reached the end of the episode. I pray that this episode has brought some eye-opening conversations and revelations, some insight, and that it has equipped you to better live your life and to work on the areas that need work. If you found this episode helpful, I encourage you to not only leave a comment, whether you're tuning in on my blog or whether you're tuning in on Spotify. Let me know your comments. Let me know what you got out of this episode. And the biggest compliment that you can pay me, aside from a comment, is subscribe to the podcast. It's available on Spotify. It is available in Amazon Music. It is available in iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe. And also share this episode with someone who you know is motivated to improving their relationships and becoming the best version of themselves. With that said, thank you for tuning in to the next episode. Have a blessed day.